President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the floor is given to the lead co-lawyer for civil party. You may now proceed. Again, good morning, Mr. Witness. Are you ready? Good morning, Mr. Pechka, once again. Witness, good morning, Mr. President. President, are you ready? President, good morning once again, Mr. Pechka.
Được. Sẽ ăn nhiều ở ăn nhiều ở. Sai kèn này thì đây ăn kèn rồi con còn mơ lợn con nào đi. Okay, man. Mình ăn nhiều rồi. Khởi ăn nhiều nhé. Ok. Chắc ăn một tí. Vâng. Ở đây mà.
President, once again, good morning, Mr. Pechka. Witness, good morning once again, Mr. President. President, now we resume our hearing, and the floor is given to the lead co-lawyer for civil party.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning once more time. Witness, this is Marie Guiraud again. I have a few brief questions to put to you. We were speaking about the presence of zone soldiers with AK-47s who were patrolling the worksite. And you said to us right before the break, you described the notion of enemy, and I asked you the question, what does it mean for you to be an enemy? What did it mean back then? And I wanted to have you react to what the witness before you had said. He was a unit chief on the dam when you were there, and the co-prosecutor asked him a question which I'm going to read out, and I'm going to also read out his answer, and I would like to know what you think of this. And this is at 11:30 yesterday morning. So the co-prosecutor puts the following question. I wanted to get back to this topic of enemies. Could we call enemy people who did not reach the quota or who did not cart enough dirt, for example? And the previous witness, who was a unit chief on the work site, so he did not have the same duties as you, but he said that based on what people would say, we would consider these people enemies who had infiltrated, and these were people who would obstruct the progress on the work site. So back then, witness, did you also hear these reasons? And did you also hear people telling you that enemies were people who would obstruct the progress of the work on the work site?
Witness, the word enemies, in my opinion, I heard people saying about enemies. And for what categories of enemy there were in that area, I cannot give any description.
And when you speak about categories of enemies, what do you mean by that?
Witness, when I am referring to category of enemies, I do not know what other witnesses said about enemies, and I do not know how many categories of enemy were there at that site. I really do not know.
Thank you, witness. What's important for us today is what you are saying and not necessarily what the previous witnesses said. So what I would like to focus on is on what you said and what you saw back then. So I'd like you to tell us spontaneously what you remember. So the two people in your unit who disappeared and whom you spoke about this morning, were they considered enemies?
Witness, I do not know. What I know is that they disappeared. I do not know what happened to them.
Quelle était la...
What is the conclusion you drew back then, following the disappearance of your two colleagues?
President, you do not need to give your response to the question put to you, Mr. Witness. Such question should not be asked. You cannot ask a witness to give any conclusion because this witness is not an expert witness.
I will not insist upon this, but with all due respect, we can put questions to the witness about what they experienced, and that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to understand the witness's experience back then, but I will stop then. I will, of course, defer to your wisdom, but I believe that this question is perfectly in line with the questions that are permitted before this chamber. Witness, I'm going to move on. So you said to my colleague a little earlier on that the workers seem to be in perfect normal shape, and you said something a bit different to the investigators because you said, and I will refer to your record, French ERN 002 CAT 2239. English 0040305 and Khmer 00389523, and you indicated when the question about their health was put to you that talking about health, it was not pleasant. The people's health was weak, and then you explained that there were medics at the site and that there was even an infirmary. So can you tell us, what can you tell us today about these remarks you made back then? Do you confirm that the workers were not in good health?
Answer as to this question. I gave my statement yesterday already. I said that workers were in normal shape when I responded to the question what working condition of people when they were carrying earth, and I believe I gave my response already. As for people who were seriously sick, they were sent to hospital, and for workers at the site, I could consider that they were in normal shape.
Thank you, witness. I simply wanted you to note that your answer in 2009 was quite different from what you said yesterday, and you noted that the workers were not in very good health, but I will stop here. I have a last question for you. You were already questioned about the hygiene conditions on the work site, and the witness before you told us that there was a particularly high number of flies on the work site, and he connected this to a lack of sanitation. Is this something that you also noted?
Answer. I agreed to what was said by that witness. I could experience the same.
The witness told us that this was a serious problem, and it was a particular problem when people were eating. So concretely speaking, how many flies were there, and what kind of discomfort would this cause? When I say how many, I'm not asking for a precise figure, but can you give us an idea? Because when I read the different accounts, this issue seemed to be particularly pressing on this worksite. So I would like to hear your remarks about this.
Witness. In relation to flies, there were many flies. I could not give you the figure. There were many workers, and at that time it was the dry season, so there were many flies.
Well, I will stop at that. Witness, thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. President. I am done with my examination.
President, now the floor is given to the defense counsel for the accused, and the floor is first given to the defense counsel for Mr. Nuon Chia to put their question to this witness, Mr. Pechsokha. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, Counsel. Good morning, Mr. Witness. I have a few questions to you. I don't think very many. I would like to start with you by going back to something you said yesterday about your education. When you went to the school in Rusei Keu in Phnom Penh, and when you were speaking yesterday about around 100 students who were in your class, I was wondering whether you know whether before your class that lasted for 6 months, there was also another class, another year of students, or was your class the first class at that school? Do you know?
Witness, in relation to my education at that place, I would like to inform the court that before I was sent to school there, I have no idea whether or not there had been a course before the time that I was there.
Very well, thank you. In your statement to the investigators, Mr. Witness, on the very first question, that is English ERN 00403002, Khmer 00389520, and French 00422236. You said, and I quote, they had many fields of study: public work, car repairing, lathe machine, agriculture, irrigation, hydroelectricity, and the iron. And then you said, I was interested in the irrigation and hydroelectricity. Do you remember why at the time you were particularly interested in that subject?
Witness asked for my interest in the subject because the field of irrigation and hydroelectricity are of my interest. That is why I decided to take that fields.
I understand that, and I realize it's a long time ago, but do you remember why that particular field was of so much interest to you?
Witness, I cannot give any further elaboration on this field. To me, I am very interested in the irrigation and hydroelectricity. That is why I decided to take the course. That's what I can explain.
Do you remember that in 1976 the country was hit by a drought?
Answer, I could not remember it.
When you finished your 6-month study in Phnom Penh in the field of irrigation and hydroelectricity, do you remember whether you were happy to start working at one of the dam constructions in the country, or you don't remember that?
Witness, during that time, it's not a matter of happiness or not. The matter is that Angka assigned me to do the work, assigned us to do the work, so we had to do it.
Let me now take you to the actual work at the dam site, Mr. Witness. Do you recall what, if any, machinery was used at the dam site?
Answer, I could remember it. We saw machinery. There were bulldozer, there were excavators.
Do you recall at the time at the work site how many of these bulldozers and excavators were in operation?
Witness, I cannot recall the numbers because I was not the one who was in charge in the machinery.
In your statement to the investigators, English 004-03004, French 0042238, and Khmer 00389523, you said that excavators and machineries were used to dig up rock. A little further, you also indicate that gunpowder was used to break the rock. Is that a fair description of the reason of use of these machines and the gunpowder?
Answer. As I stated earlier, nothing else was there, only the things that I described yesterday.
But is it correct that when at the site Rocky Bottom was located, that it was the machines that were used to work over there, or explosives, rather than human forces?
Answer. I stated yesterday that what I could see, whether it's correct to use the machines or explosive, I have no idea.
I understand. Mr. Witness, yesterday you spoke about your 3 direct colleagues. Do you know whether there were any other technicians or engineers working at the dam site?
I don't understand your question.
You were a surveyor. You were working in a team of 4 people. So I just refer to you as a technician or an engineer. Do you know if there were other people like you working at the work site, supervising the work at the dam?
I knew only that there was a group of 4 technicians. I did not know whether there were other groups.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Witness, you also testified yesterday and before the investigators that people who were working at the work site were asked or requested or instructed to carry around 2 cubic meter per person of soil. Do you know on which calculation it was based in the time that people had to, on average, carry 2 cubic meter soil per person?
I learned of that information through the announcement over the loudspeaker, and I did not know if each worker could complete that work quota of 2 cubic meter soil per day.
But do you have any knowledge, maybe from your studies in the school in Phnom Penh, why it was 2 cubic meter on average per person, and not, for instance, 1.5 or 2.5 cubic meter per person? why was it that it was calculated that an average person could carry 2 cubic meter soil per person?
I cannot respond to that question since I do not know about it.
Very well, thank you. Do you know, maybe also based on your studies or on your conversations with your colleagues, why it was that approximately 20,000 people of labor force were needed at the construction of the dam? Why 20,000? Why, for instance, not 25,000 or 15,000? Do you have any idea as to the reasons of this particular number of people?
No, I don't have that knowledge. And as to the number of the workers or the reasons, I had no idea. And I heard about the total numbers through the announcement over the loudspeaker.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Witness. Now I have some follow-up questions in relation to working conditions at the dam site. I noted down a few of your answers that you gave yesterday and also before the investigators. You said that people worked mostly during the daytime. Once in a while, you said they were asked to strive to work hard. Before the investigators, you said that they could take a rest once finished and digging and carrying the soil early, and that within the various periods of the day they had a 15-minute break. Did I, in general terms, summarize correctly what you said in relation to working times and conditions?
I'm sorry, but I don't get your question.
I just gave you a few quotes from your own testimony, both yesterday and before the investigators. And my question simply was whether I adequately summed up what you said in terms of working hours at the work site. I'd be happy to repeat them for you. You said that the workers worked mostly daytime, that once in a while they were asked to strive to work hard, that they could take a rest once they finished digging and carrying early, and that every part of the day they had a 15-minute break. Is that a fair summary of the working times?
Your Honor, Mr. President, before the witness answers, I simply don't see the point of this question. Counsel is purporting to summarize evidence that he says is on the record. These are not direct quotes. They're paraphrases. The evidence is already on the record. There's no reason to repeat it in this way and get the witness to adopt counsel's summary of his testimony when we have the witness's testimony before us.
I think I'm at liberty to ask the questions that I think I should ask. All of the 4 quotes that I gave were literal quotes, both from the testimony and his written statement. So I think I should be able to ask whether this is a fair summary of what he has said, or what he has testified so far on working hours.
Your Honor, if they're literal quotes, then the question is even more pointless. The evidence is already on the record. He's asking the witness, essentially, what is the evidence on the record? There's no reason to do that. And if the quotes are not accurate, then it leads to an introduced contradiction.
Council, before we make a decision, is the objective of this summary of yours to lay the foundation for further related questions, or is it summarizing for summarizing's sake?
I'll move on, Your Honor. Mr. Witness, I would like to ask you specific questions in relation to working times. In your statement to the investigators, English page 004-03006, let me see if I have the French ERN 004-22241 and Khmer 00389524. You said that the working times at the dam site were from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the morning, and the afternoon from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. During the working hours, you said the workers were allowed to have a 15-minute break, and at night the work started from 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. I will get back to the question on the night time later, but I have a question to you. Do you know why people didn't work between 11 and 2 p.m.?
I don't know the reason. However, we were allowed to rest during that period.
Do you know whether these 3 hours of rest during the day between 11 and 2 p.m. had something to do with that period in time being the hottest time of the day?
Yes, during the day that was the hottest period.
And have you ever heard at the time that was the reason to allow all 20,000 workers a break of 3 hours?
No, I don't. I simply knew that was the period that we were allowed to rest.
This 15-minute break that you spoke about in your written statement, was this 15-minute break coming every day at around the same time? And if yes, was it announced over the complete work site at the time? What do you remember about these 15-minute breaks during working hours?
I recall that for each morning and afternoon session, and about in the middle of the combined time for each session, the workers were allowed to have that short break.
And do you remember whether that was centrally announced, maybe through loudspeakers, so that all workers at the same time sat down to have their 50-minute breaks in the various parts of the day?
Yes. The announcement was made through the loudspeaker. That is the time to have a rest and the time to resume the work.
And did the loudspeaker announce also the beginning of the 3-hour break around lunchtime and the end of that 3-hour break? Was that also centrally announced through the loudspeakers?
Yes.
Did you ever see anybody instructed, ordered to work during these 3 hours of break, respectively these 50-minute breaks?
I didn't try to make that observation.
Then working at the night time, I have an additional follow-up question on this. You said that people worked at night as well. As I understood, not always and not regularly. Following up on that observation, have you ever heard of an announcement which was also related in a Revolutionary Flag magazine of 1977 in relation to the benefits and the disadvantages of working at nighttime?
No, I did not know about that.
Allow me, Mr. Witness, to read a very small excerpt from a Revolutionary Flag to you. That is, Mr. President, document E3/170, English ERN 00182578, French 00665429, and Khmer 00064792. And on that particular page of this Revolutionary Flag, I read the following. Our past has experienced been that the profitable aspects of night work are small, whereas there are a lot of costly aspects. 1, adverse effect on health. 2, expenditure of electricity. 3, but the biggest losses are political and ideological. Have you ever heard at the time any remarks from your superiors or others that working at night, according to the Revolutionary Flag or the CPK, had adverse effects on the health of the people?
No, I did not hear about that statement.
What about the availability of electricity at the dam site? What do you remember about the possibility of having electricity for the nighttime?
I recall that at night time there was electricity for the lighting purpose.
Very well. My last question in relation to workforce, etc., is, do you know whether within the big group of 20,000 workers, there was also a rotation of workforces, that workforces who were there were at one point replaced by other workforces? In other words, the 20,000 people or so who were working during a period of 6 months or longer were not always the same. Do you have any knowledge about that?
President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. Mr. Paisaka, please hold on. And the counsel for the civil parties, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make my objection to this question. Defense Counsel Copper put a question to the witness by quoting the number of around 20,000 workers. Yesterday and also this morning, the witness confirms that he does not know about the totality of the workers at the work site and that he knows only about his own group. And that is the best for my objection. Thank you.
I think, and I don't think we dispute that there were approximately 20,000 workers. And I believe even this witness testified to the proximity of that number. So I think I'll be able to ask that question.
President, the objection by the lawyer for civil parties is overruled, and the witness can respond to that. The nature of the work of the witness was from the beginning of the dam construction work site to the end of the length of the dam. So it is appropriate for the witness to respond to that question. And please, Mr. Witness, respond to the last question put to you by the Defense Counsel. Witness, on the issue of the rotation of workforces, I have no knowledge about it.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Witness. Now I would like to move on to a question on the medical situation, health situation, but particularly yours. Did you yourself, at the time that you worked at the dam site, ever experienced illness, for instance, in the form of having diarrhea, having fever, etc.? And if yes, do you remember whether you were provided medicine and whether you subsequently were cured of your sickness?
I myself contracted a fever at the time, and I was given some tablets, and I recovered from the illness.
In your statement to the investigators on this matter, that is ERN 00403004 in English, French 0042224039, and Khmer 00389523, you said that the medicine that was given to you was effective. The medicine that was given to you was effective for you. Were you able to observe whether other people that you saw and who had been sick and who had been given medicine were subsequently cured and that apparently the medicine was effective?
I cannot say anything about that, as I had nothing to do with the medical unit or with the medicine.
Very well, Mr. Witness. I don't have many more questions. A very last question. Do you remember ever having seen any wedding ceremonies, mass wedding ceremonies taking place at the 1st January dam site?
Personally, I never witnessed any marriage ceremony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. You have been very helpful. Thank you.
President, thank you. The chamber now hands the floor to the Defense Counsel for Akil Sampon. And Counsel, you can proceed.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour, Monsieur Petsoka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Petsoka. I am Antagise, International Co-Counsel for Mr. Kyosampan, and I'll have a few follow-up questions following what you said over the past few days. First of all, I'd like us to talk about first point in your statement, E3/403. The ERN in French is 0042 2238. In English, 00403004. And in Khmer, 00389 This was a question that was put to you on that day regarding the plan for the construction of the dam. Do you think the plan that you surveyed was correct according to the scale? And your answer was as follows. I think that the plan was clear because if we looked from the upper surface at the widths and right and left sides, they had correct scales. End of quote. My question on this point, witness, is whether you learned how to read a plan as part of your training at Ruseo Keo.
Personally, my personal knowledge about the reading of the plan about the irrigation, for instance, I think the plan is proportionate and correct.
J'ai bien compris.
I have indeed understood that point. My question was whether you learned how to read such plans as part of your training.
During my training at the Iriseka school, the main topic was how to conduct a survey on the landscape or on the dam work site.
Et dans le cadre
As part of your training as a surveyor, were you also taught how to read irrigation plans?
No, I did not receive that kind of a training.
est-ce que c'est
Was it with your instructor and supervisor, Cham, that you discussed the plan and got to know that it was according to scale?
Cham was not my instructor, but was my group chief, and he was more knowledgeable than me, and he told us that the plan was proportionate and according to scale.
Another point, you spoke about this passage in your testimony with my colleague Victor Koppe. It's still on the same page and the same ERNs I just quoted. You spoke about the usage of excavators, and I quote, and you said, I heard through the loudspeakers that the compatriots were told to pay attention because we had to use explosives in order to remove stones. End of quote, free translation. So, were these security messages frequent and frequently broadcast by the loudspeakers on the worksite?
Yes, every time before the gunpowder explosion was initiated, a broadcast was made through the loudspeaker.
Aside from these security broadcasts, were there also broadcasts related to sanitation for the workers on the worksite?
I cannot recall that.
Est-ce que
Do you remember if medics would come to provide specific instructions either through your superiors or through the loudspeakers? Did you receive any kind of specific instructions in medical terms with regard to certain practices that should be followed?
I cannot recall that.
You also spoke about the presence of flies when you answered the Civil Party Council. And do you remember if any measures were taken on the worksite to get rid of the flies? For example, do you remember any measures being taken to use pesticides or that kind of thing? Do you remember anything in that regard?
Yes, I did. In order to eliminate those many flies, they actually use a pesticide to kill them.
Do you know who was in charge of spraying these pesticides? Was it a specific unit or you don't know?
No, I do not know.
un autre
In another segment of your statement, in the document E343, ERN French 00422-243, English ERN 00403-008, and Khmer 00389-527, you speak about a slogan that you had heard stating the following: when there is water, there are fish. When there is rice, there's everything that is necessary. Do you remember when you heard the slogan? And was this something that was put forth on the worksite?
Answer: I heard over the loudspeaker there was such an announcement. There was a revolutionary song played in the period. I believe that people in the period also heard the same thing.
And this will be my last question. So, when there is water, there are fish. Is this something you heard for the first time on that worksite? Or was this some kind of popular saying that existed during the Khmer Rouge period?
Answer: I did not know before that the time that I went to work at the work site.
Je pense qu'il doit...
There might have been a translation issue because my question was if the slogan that it say when there is water, there are fish, was if this was a popular saying that existed before the Khmer Rouge period, or is this something that you heard for the first time when you were at the work site?
Answer. I only heard the slogan or the saying at the work site. I had never heard it before the time that I was working at the work site.
Mr. President, I am done. I believe that my colleague Kong Sam-on has a few short questions, so I think we could finish our examination if you give us a little bit of extra time this morning. I will let you decide, Mr. President.
President, you may proceed now. Council, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Peksoka. I have a few short questions. First, I would like to know, and I would like to hear your clarification concerning the dam of 1st January dam. You said that the length of the 1st January dam was about 58 kilometers away. Does this length cover also the 6th January dam? Answer. As for the length of the dam, stated by me from my recollection, the total length of the combined dams was about 60 kilometers or less than that, including the fitting canal. Council, thank you. Could you elaborate for the court what was the width of the dam? Witness, I cannot recall it. Counsel, you stated that you did not remember, so was there a particular place at the dam which consisted, which was bigger than the other area? Answer, I do not recall it. Counsel, thank you. Could you give the clarification or the calculation about the soil which was used to build the dam? Answer, I could not give any explanation in relation to this. Counsel, thank you very much. In relation to the written record of your statement, document E3/403 at Khmer EON 0038 95 26. French EON is at 0042 22 43, and English EON is at 0040 30 08. I would like to quote your statement when you were questioned about the 1st January dam and the 6th January dam. Let me quote. The name of the 1st January dam was given at the time that Vietnamese troops came into the country. And it was also the date of the opening construction of the dam. I would like to seek your clarification in relation to the 6th January dam. You said that the 6th January dam was named at the time that a Vietnamese troop attacked and went into the country. Answer: the group chief told me that the names was given at the time that the troops, the Vietnamese troop, attacked and went into the country. Chama was my group chief, and he told me about this. Counsel, thank you very much, Mr. Witness. Mr. President, I conclude my line of questioning. President, thank you, Counsel. The hearing today comes to an end before the time planned by the Chamber, and the hearing will not be held in the afternoon. The hearing will resume on Monday, starting from 9 a.m. And as for hearing the next week, the Chamber will hear 2 TCW 851 rather. Thank you, Mr. Pekshakar, for your valuable time, and thank you for giving your testimony via video link yesterday and today. And your testimony will contribute to the truth. And the hearing of your testimony come to an end, and I wish you good health and best wishes. Mr. Pekshakar, thank you, Mr. President. Security personnel are instructed to bring Mr. Kieu Sampon and Mr. Nuon Chea back to the detention facility and bring them back on the 25th May 2015 before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.